The night the wind tore across the plains like a warning, everyone in Dry Creek believed they knew what kind of man Elias Crow was. They thought they understood the weight of his silence, the hard lines of his face, the way his boots carried dust from one end of town to the other. But none of them knew what really happened in that barn, or how one cruel decision set off a chain of events that would haunt a woman, break a man, and eventually force an entire town to look at itself in the mirror. Clara Whitmore arrived in Dry Creek with nothing but a worn carpet bag and a letter that promised work. Her husband had died on the trail west, buried beneath a nameless cottonwood, and she had learned quickly that grief did not pay for bread. The letter spoke of a ranch needing a hand in the kitchen, a place to sleep, a chance to start again. She stepped off the stagecoach with dust on her dress and hope held together by threadbare faith. Believing that any honest work was better than starving quietly, Elias Crow watched her from the porch of the general store, his hat low over his eyes. He was known as the town's hardest rancher, a man who had carved his land out of rock and drought with his bare hands. Folks said he had lost his heart years ago, that whatever kindness he once possessed had been buried with his family after a fire took everything. When he looked at Clara, his gaze was not cruel, but it was empty. Like a gate left swinging in the wind, the job was his ranch. Long days, early mornings, little talk, Clara accepted without hesitation. She had learned that gratitude was quieter than pride. The ranch sat miles from town, the barn looming like a shadow against the wide sky. At first, the work was exactly what she expected. Scrubbing floors, mending clothes, cooking meals that were eaten in silence. Elias paid on time and asked for nothing beyond the work itself. But the barn was different. It was where Elias kept the things he did not want to see. Old equipment, broken wagons, and memories he never spoke of. Clara felt it every time she passed its doors. The way the air seemed heavier, as if the past had soaked into the wood. Still, she had no reason to fear it. Not yet. Trouble came quietly, the way it always does. A prized horse went missing. Then a lock was found broken. Whispers began in town, sharp and fast, like sparks catching dry grass. Elias had enemies. Men who wanted his land, men who envied his success. But suspicion has a way of taking the easiest path, and in Dry Creek that path led straight to the outsider. Clara felt the change before anyone said a word. Elias grew colder, his silence heavier. He watched her with narrowed eyes, counting movements, measuring shadows. One evening, as the sun bled red across the fields, he told her to follow him to the barn. His voice held no anger, only a flat finality that made her stomach tighten. Inside, the barn smelled of hay and old iron. The light fell through the slats in thin accusing lines. Elias closed the door behind them, the sound echoing like a verdict. Clara tried to speak, but fear stole her words. He accused her of stealing, of betraying the small trust he had given. Each word cut deeper than the last, because they were not shouted. They were delivered with the calm certainty of a man who had already decided the truth. What Elias did in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine, not because of violence, but because of humiliation and despair. He locked her inside overnight, alone with the cold and the dark, telling her she would stay there until she confessed. He believed that fear would bring honesty, that pressure would crack lies. He did not consider that an innocent person has nothing to confess. The hours stretched endlessly. Clara sat on the dirt floor, hugging herself as the temperature dropped. Memories of her husband, of the road west, of every loss she had endured pressed down on her chest. She prayed, not for rescue, but for strength to endure. By morning, her hope was bruised but unbroken. When Elias opened the door at dawn, he expected tears, begging, a confession. Instead, he found Clara standing, her eyes red but steady. She told him the truth, quietly and without anger. She had stolen nothing. She would leave as soon as she was paid what she was owed. There was dignity in her voice that unsettled him more than any lie could have. She left that day, walking back to town under the rising sun. The story followed her, twisted and sharpened by gossip. Some said she was a thief who had been shown mercy. Others said worse things. Clara said nothing. She found work where she could, cleaned rooms, washed clothes, kept her head down. But the barn followed her in nightmares. The darkness closing in. The sound of the door shutting her away from the world. Elias tried to forget it. He told himself he had done what was necessary. Yet the ranch grew quieter, the land heavier. Then the truth came, as it always does. A drifter was caught selling the missing horse 2 towns over. The locks had been broken by someone who knew Elias's schedule. The evidence was clear, undeniable. Guilt settled over Elias like a storm cloud that would not move. He replayed that night again and again. The fear in Clara's eyes, the way he had chosen cruelty over compassion. For the first time in years, the past clawed its way back to the surface. He remembered the fire, the way people had turned away, the loneliness that followed. He had sworn never to be weak again, never to trust. In doing so, he had become the very thing he despised. Redemption does not come easily, and it never comes without cost. Elias rode into town and stood in the street where everyone could see him. He told the truth. He admitted his mistake, his cruelty, his failure. The town listened in stunned silence as the strongest man they knew broke under the weight of his own actions. Finding Clara was harder. She had learned not to expect apologies. When Elias finally stood before her, hat in hand, his words faltered. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not offer excuses. He simply acknowledged the harm he had done and offered restitution. More than money, more than work. He offered to rebuild what he had broken, even if she never wanted to see him again. Clara listened. The scars were still there, invisible but deep. Forgiveness did not come all at once, but something shifted. Elias's remorse was real, and she could see it in the way he carried himself, in the way he no longer hid from his mistakes. Slowly, cautiously, she allowed herself to believe that people could change. Time passed. The ranch became a place of healing instead of fear. Elias worked alongside his hands, spoke openly, listened more than he talked. Clara found her voice again, found strength in surviving what had nearly crushed her. The barn was repaired, its doors left open, light flooding a place once ruled by darkness. In the end, the story of what happened in that barn was no longer one of shame alone, but of accountability and transformation. It reminded Dry Creek that silence can wound as deeply as any blow, and that true strength lies in owning your failures and choosing to do better. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the darkest moments can lead to growth and redemption, take a moment to show your support. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep these stories alive, because every tale carries a lesson, and sometimes, hearing it is the first step toward becoming better than we were yesterday.